Good afternoon and welcome to our weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Mark Elridge. I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today are Dr. James Bridgers, who is the Director for the Department of Health and Human Services, Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Assistant Chief of Public Health Services, Dr. Earl Stoddard, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, and our special guest this afternoon is Emmanuel Briggs, who is the Director of Community Affairs for DC Water. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Good afternoon, Mr. County Executive. The floor is yours.
And good afternoon to everybody. So this afternoon, I'm down in Annapolis, and with over a month left in the General Assembly session, many of the legislative decisions are being finalized. And I've met with county leaders on our state delegation and General Assembly leadership. In fact, we're having a meeting this afternoon. These decisions, whether budgetary or policy related, are going to affect our county government operations and services to residents. So I'm going to start by talking about one of the most exciting news items of the last few weeks, which is the DC Water the break in the sewer. And we're going to talk about DC Water's public meeting tonight at Whitman High School in Bethesda. The federal government's approval of Mayor Bowser's request for federal aid and resources to mitigate the impacts of this bill was welcome news this week. Tomorrow night, DC Water's leadership and technical teams will meet with the community at Whitman in Bethesda. They'll discuss what's been done so far and the repair timeline. I know many residents have questions and concerns about the DC Water sanitary sewer overflow into the Potomac River. Regional partners are meeting regularly about this issue. Earlier this week, the Council of Governments met with DC Water executives to discuss the spill's impact. Sean O'Donnell from our HHS department presented on behalf of the regional health officers. I want to thank him, Dr. Davis, Dr. Bridgers, our HHS team, the Department of Environmental Protection, and the Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security employees for the engagement on this matter. I'm encouraged by the consistent testing being done by the State Department of the Environment, and we're committed to keeping you informed about the work to protect the community, our land, and our environment. Our priority is to share accurate information about what's going on. So in keeping with that, I'd like to welcome DC Water's Director of Community Affairs, Emmanuel Briggs, to today's briefing. Emmanuel is here and is holding this meeting in Montgomery County tomorrow night as well. So, Mr. Briggs, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, sir. And admittedly, Sherry Lewis and John Lau, who are really working closely with this event minute to minute, they're not able to join the call today. So what I'm here to do more so than answer questions is to just give you kind of a brief synopsis on kind of where we are and including the community meetings. If there are questions, I really encourage you to come to the meetings where we will be having live streaming to get those questions answered, or you can submit questions to us in advance through our RSVP line, but I'll get to that. Before I kick off my talking points, I do want to give a great big shout out to the Office of Representative Raskin for working with us. First of all, just acknowledging the need to have a public meeting to discuss with the community what's been happening and where we are and the steps ahead. And two, just supporting us in terms of getting a location, a venue for it. It's been assistance and coordination, the whole way. And so we certainly do want to thank Congressman Raskin, want to thank Kathleen. She certainly has been working with us at Tandem very closely. Mayor Costello with the town of Glen Echo, Cabin John Citizens Association have been working really closely with us to get us to this point. So that said, since the unfortunate incident occurred on January 19th of this year, DC Water has been providing an abundance of communications and outreach to both local and regional stakeholders to keep everyone in the loop on all the work activities that DC Water has been executing, including initial investigation of the issue, installation of a sewer bypass system to help contain the overflow and give our team and crews an opportunity to examine the pipe and assess the extent of the damage, draining the remaining wastewater from the pipe so we could begin excavation and repair, and finally working through site challenges throughout this process, such as freezing temperatures and significant rock blockage found in a portion of the pipeline, which have understandably presented some impacts to our cleaning and repair timeline. Our communications and outreach to stakeholders has been a daily occurrence since January 19th and primarily includes the following: press releases and formal updates posted to our website and sent to our media contacts, standing up a web page dedicated to this repair project, which encapsulates all releases and updates sent to date, along with daily water quality data taken from our water quality monitoring efforts. Circulation of an open letter from our CEO and General Manager, Mr. David Gaddis, to stakeholders, reinforcing DC Water's shared commitment to the Potomac River. Managing countless media interview requests and inquiries via telephone, email, in person, and on-site at the Potomac Interceptor. Hosting some partner jurisdictions and agencies on site to discuss our repair efforts, social media messaging around our repair efforts, and monitoring customer inquiries there as well. And then provision of our daily releases and updates to a number of stakeholders, and that includes Maryland congressional members, regulatory agencies, district agencies, other Maryland entities, regional municipalities, advocacy groups, such as boat houses and things of that nature, users of the river and their representative groups, including, Anacostia Watershed Society, and the list goes on. Some council members, various neighborhood commissions, and mayor's office in DC. And we're constantly adding to the list of recipients daily updates. So if you do want to be on the list to get updates on what's happening, you can certainly feel free to reach out to me and ask that you be included in those daily updates. We do send those out every evening, and that'll tell you where we are, what the day's results have been for the day's work, and the water quality monitoring data. Last but not least, we're going to continue with those efforts, and as part of that, we do have the two public meetings. We do have, well, three public meetings actually. We have one this afternoon at 2 p.m. That's a virtual one with some of the environmental groups that we have been coordinating with. Tonight at 7 p.m. at our headquarters, we actually have our in-person, and there is a virtual option as well, and a dial-in option to speak with, well, district meeting installation. And then tomorrow night is the Montgomery County installation, and that will be at Walt Whitman High School in the cafeteria at 7 p.m. So what we're going to have as part of those setups is going to be pretty much a hybrid format, how we typically do our town hall meetings, where we'll have some partner agencies, entities, some departments inside DC Water, such as our Potomac Interceptor crew that can answer questions about Potomac Interceptor. They will be set up at tables outside the room, so anyone can ask questions at those information tables either before or after the presentation. But actually inside the cafeteria will be a formal presentation that will be given by Mr. Gaddis. You'll also hear from Kirsten Williams, who is our chief. Well, she's everything actually. She's CAO, and she's still our Chief Communications and Stakeholder Engagement Officer and EVP. You'll also hear from Matt Brown, who is our new COO. And so you'll hear from some of those folks in terms of the presentation slide deck, and we'll all be there to answer questions. And that's all I have.
All right. Mr. Briggs, did I hear you correctly? You will not be taking questions. We have a couple of members of the media. I'm not quite sure if they have questions for you this afternoon or not. Will you?
So I'm not able to answer your questions, but what I would encourage you to do, if you can please, and I can put my email address in the chat, you can email me those questions. I would get those right over to Sherry Lewis and John Lau, and we can get you answers if you're not able to attend the meetings virtually or in person.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. For the reporters, the members of the media that are here, we'll put that email on the chat, and then you can communicate with DC Water. Thank you for joining us, Mr. County Executive. Back to you.
All right. So I guess we'll take those questions at the end of this with everything else. I also want to thank the County Council for their support yesterday in the passage of tax increment financing, or TIF package, for the Viva White Oak development yesterday. I also want to recognize MCB Real Estate for its collaborative work with the county and the East County community to move this forward. This is a large project, And it's only going to succeed when there's trust, patience, and a willingness to engage. And MCB demonstrated that throughout this process. Viva White Oak is a game changer for the East County. For too long, this part of Montgomery County has not seen the level of investment that it deserved. It's been pretty much neglected for decades. Development, particularly things related to economic development, have almost solely been focused on the other side of the county. This project will bring nearly 5,000 new homes, more than 9,000 permanent jobs, and long-awaited infrastructure improvements. And the kind of mixed-use development that it creates is going to make possible a real community with parks, trails, retail, and space for future public facilities. So this brings a lot with it. It's much different than the strip centers that have been there, and we're really looking forward to this development here. The Viva White Oak development is going to expand our tax base and position Montgomery County to compete for jobs and investment in a very competitive market. A large portion of the land is set aside for office and other economic uses beyond housing. At full build-out, this project is expected to generate tens of millions of dollars in annual county revenue. Just as important, this financing structure protects the existing county resources. Independent analysis confirmed that the TIF does not impact our general fund or our bond rating. It allows a future site growth to pay for itself. And this is the infrastructure that we need to unlock. If the county had to do this, it would have been beyond the ability of us to stretch the resources to build the infrastructure. It would have taken us a long period of time to marshal that amount of money to go into infrastructure. This makes this possible in a reasonable time frame, and we're all looking forward to it. The East County's obviously waited a long time for this moment, and Tuesday's vote moves us from planning and discussion into action. And I'm proud of the work we've done together. I look forward to seeing shovels in the ground. This vision is going to become a reality. I will say, when I got elected, there were a bunch of projects that were stuck on the east side of the county. There was the Burtonsville project, there was the White Oak Town Center, there was New Hampshire Avenue Gateway, and Viva White Oak. I feel pretty good now that every single one of them has moved forward. And on top of that, something that wasn't on the agenda when I started is the East County campus of Montgomery College. So I feel like the East County has gotten a lot of the attention that it really deserved. And I'm glad people, we are able to get to see some of the things that have been talked about for so long actually come into fruition. We also received some really important news from Montgomery County and for our entire biohealth capital region that was announced by the University of Maryland yesterday. The National Institutes of Health awarded $12.5 million to support a major new artificial intelligence initiative focused on Alzheimer's disease. And the University of Maryland Institute of Health Computing is right at the center of it. This is a 5-year multi-institutional project led in part by the University of Maryland researchers working alongside partners at the University of Southern California, the University of Pennsylvania, and the University of Indiana University, sorry. And together they're also using AI and the machine learning to analyze massive biobank data sets, genomic, biomarker, and cognitive data to identify patients patterns that signal a risk for Alzheimer's and also other forms of dementia. Alzheimer's affects more than 7 million older adults in the United States. The cost, financial burden, and human are staggering. What makes this disease especially devastating is the changes that can begin in the brain 15 to 20 years before symptoms appear. If we can identify the risk earlier, we can intervene earlier, and that's the promise here. What excites me about this announcement is twofold. First, it shows that Montgomery County remains a global hub for cutting-edge biomedical research. When NIH invests and when UMIHC leads, the work is happening here, creating high-skilled jobs, attracting talent, and strengthening our innovation economy. And second, it reflects the smart, responsible use of AI, helping doctors diagnose more accurately and improve clinical trials and potentially accelerating drug discovery. I think, for all the publicity that goes around AI, sometimes it just sounds like AI is one big mess. While I share on any number of those concerns, there's also a really good side. of AI, and that's the ability to use data, access massive amounts of data that people can never do. The ability to take images and look at them and evaluate them using AI rather than the human eye. And it turns out that in many cases, AI can detect things that people don't see. So I just want to say that not everything associated with AI is evil. And there's a lot of potential that can come out of the constructive use of it. And this is one of those things. We talked about connecting the dots between economic development, research, healthcare, and technology. And this is exactly what it looks like. World-class science powered by AI with potential to change lives. And it's happening right here in Montgomery County. Establishing the University of Maryland's Institute for Health Computing in North Bethesda was a timely and strategic decision. And again, I want to thank the University of Maryland for their willingness to get engaged in that project. And they've made it what it is, and I'm really excited about that. So congratulations to the UMD team on this opportunity to address a significant affliction that affects numerous families. I also look ahead to tomorrow. I'm excited to be part of the ribbon cutting for HJF Innovation Labs in Montgomery County, Maryland. This is a Montgomery County branded facility financed primarily by HJF, the Henry M. Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Medicine. It brings needed smart biotech assistance, lab space to the North Bethesda area. Many of you may not know that HJF is one of the county's hidden jewels. It's been around for more than 40 years, supporting health-related research for members of the armed forces, veterans, and civilians. And I want to emphasize that they do broad research on the health of the veterans. So it's not just looking for how do you deal with battlefield wounds, which they do, but it's about all the other diseases that affect veterans in the effort to try to elevate care for veterans. And when you're elevating care for veterans, you're elevating care for everybody. So the more we learn, the better everybody benefits from it. Through an MOU with HJF, the county provided some seed funding, and we're also working together to spotlight the great research that's taking place at HJF every day. Another goal is to help our research community access this new lab, the office space, and the opportunities and expertise within HJF. There's also a beautiful auditorium facility that will be open for community events. When you think about it, military medicine helps not only those on the battlefield or veterans, but also the members of our community. Any of our county entrepreneurs working on dual-use technologies for both military and civilian purposes can work with HGF, use their spaces in Montgomery County, and get connected to other research and like other clinical trial sites around the world. This is an example of a mutually beneficial partnership that's raising the county's innovation capacity while also expanding our profile as a center for new technologies. Investing in resources for early stage companies is important, whether technology comes from or is nourished at HGF or in other incubation facilities in the county. And a good example of investing in early stage companies is my next topic. We learned Monday that Arcelix, a company that was in our Germantown incubator for more than a decade ago, just signed a $7.8 billion deal with Gilead. Just picture that, in our incubator, which is a small space with not a whole lot of equipment to start with. And they went from there, they stayed here, they grew here, and now they're part of a $7.8 billion deal. That's huge, not only because the money is larger than our county budget, but especially because it means Arcelix treatments for previously incurable diseases may be able to help patients sooner. Our incubators and support help the company slowly advance its technology while expanding its research and development team in the county. More related good news, last month, we were given some great news about federal spending in this industry. You know, I think it's been a while since we've had any great news about federal spending, but the National Institutes of Health's new budget is $48.7 billion, and it's larger than last year's. That's a sign of stability that was not assured under the Trump administration. But Congress would not allow the deep cuts to NIH. I hope this is a sign of other things. I'm glad that the Republicans ignored the president and actually recognized the value of NIH and the fact that this is not a partisan thing. Even when they realize it's a major, even though when we realize it's a major funding source that plays a vital role in accessing human health and discovery of life-saving treatments. I'm glad they understood that these treatments benefit Democrats, Republicans, and independents. Treatments don't care who you are, don't care what you look like or where you came from, and they are a benefit to human beings. And so I'm glad there was a pause in some of the craziness that's going on, a willingness to appreciate NIH for the value it really has for all of us. Human health should never be turned into a partisan issue. NIH is the genesis of the garden grown here. Without it, there is no early stage development research. There's no research to build from. Investment opportunities and investment in innovation is the next logical step in that journey. When entrepreneurs can focus on research and development, they can grow companies and unlock solutions that weren't possible before. I believe that's how we create a better future and grow our economy. Several large life sciences in Montgomery County have recently announced major expansions, manufacturing and/or reinvestment plans, because they know the local workforce can accommodate these changes. I'm really proud of the way the universities of Shady Grove and Montgomery College have recognized these opportunities, expanded their programming to respond to it, and are producing graduates ready to contribute to the innovation economy. I tell you why that's important. When we've been analyzing what we do in life sciences, and we're the number 3 life sciences center in the country. We were number 4, a few years ago. We really focused in the past few years on understanding what don't we have that would make somebody want to go someplace else. And for a long time, all these major centers tend to be focused around academic institutions. Our academic institutions, USG and Montgomery College, have transformed their programming to address this industry. So you can now get the kind of education that sets you up for careers in these fields. And I just want to thank the leadership of the institutions for continuing to look at how can the colleges or education institutions in general play a bigger role in helping the county be economically successful. I'm excited to see what develops from these innovation labs, and I want to thank HJF for their partnership. I want to share with you some test results that affirmed what we knew about the faulty boiler at the county's resource recovery facility, otherwise known as the incinerator. On February 12th, we learned that now Unit 2, its total dioxin and furan emissions are surpassing the permitted limit. We know that Unit 2 has been offline since January 4th while undergoing a major refurbishment. ReWorld, the company that runs the facility, plans to make repairs and get it back online by mid-March. This is the second boiler failure of emission tests. Unit 3 was offline for several months and then restarted on February 11th. These developments are disturbing, but our contractor is addressing them. Hold on a second. So it's important for us to, make sure that this work gets done and gets done safely. Our Department of Environmental Protection has requested detailed information for ReWorld in conjunction with the Northeast Maryland Waste Disposal Authority, which owns the RRF and contracts with ReWorld to operate the facility for the county's benefit. I just want to point out, and this is all part of the discussion that we're having about changing our facility from an incinerator to advanced recycling and recovering much more of our waste stream rather than burning it. And it has always been an environmental concern. It was an environmental concern when it was built. It continues to be an environmental concern now. And the reality is, because people are going to talk about, it's going to cost us money to build, replacement facility, this boiler and this system will not endure. We are forced to pay millions of dollars potentially in short-term fixes. And if this incinerator is not shut down, it is going to cost tens of millions of dollars to actually replace it and upgrade it with a more modern facility. So no matter what path we take, neither one of them is going to be free. Neither one of them is going to be cheap. ReWorld's not going to upgrade to a new system without a substantial capital investment, and we're the ones who have to pay for that investment. So as people ponder our choices, just remember, no free ride here, an expensive trip. Either way, one of them is more environmentally beneficial than the other. we're trying to opt for the environmentally responsible choice. By now, many people have seen the video from this past weekend of the car rally that took over some streets in Montgomery County. These incidents are highly concerning as they endangered numerous lives, including the police who responded. We are fortunate that none of our officers were harmed and appreciate their professional and safe response to this attack on their cruiser. If you haven't seen it, not only did they hit these officers with smoke bombs, they smashed out the windows of the vehicle with the officers inside. There are so many ways these car rallies can go wrong. So I'm asking everyone who knows someone who's involved to report them. Even the people who just show up to watch are putting themselves in danger of being run over by an out-of-control car. They're also encouraging people to do, frankly, stupid things. They should stay away. And the people pulling these tricks are often doing this to get social media engagement. And social media companies should not be platforming these videos. They wouldn't be if these were other crimes. Why would they do this now? All they're doing is giving dangerous people the attention they crave and rewarding them for people's lives, putting people's lives at risk. As for the incident caught on video, police are aware that multiple rallies were happening across the region, successfully stopped some, but we can't be everywhere at once. This was actually, the response to this was jointly coordinated across jurisdictions. You can see from the video that the responding police officers are far outnumbered by the participants. In this case, a police car was damaged. The people responsible will be held accountable. This is not a new issue. And in fact, the Montgomery County Police participate in the Maryland Car Rally Task Force. They help us prepare for and prevent many of the so-called takeovers, keeping traffic disruptions to a minimum. Also, these rallies occur in the early morning hours when many people are not out. Regardless, they remain a threat to public safety and will not be tolerated. We're looking to state lawmakers to strengthen the laws to prosecute serial offenders and the people who help them stage these events. I'm also aware of late-breaking news that MCPD has made an arrest in the case of the 87-year-old who was murdered at an assisted living center last week. More details will be announced at a joint press conference later this afternoon with MCPD, the state's attorney's office, and the Maryland State Police. So before we open up the questions, I'd like to give my staff an opportunity to share any updates. We'll start today with our health team.
Good afternoon, Mr. County Executive. Yesterday, we were informed that the County Council approved the $1 million supplemental award for our senior community. It was a significant milestone for us as the Department of Health and Human Services, and we want to thank you for your commitment to our age-friendly community and building a longevity ready ecosystem. Also, thanks to Councilmember Sells, who was the lead sponsor of the appropriation, and the County Council for approving it, and Dr. McGee and her team for compiling all of the data and the necessary information. Through this restoration and the appropriation, we are able to restore services for individuals who've been on a wait list since November, December timeframe, specifically 141 seniors for our senior nutrition program, 345 seniors who are waiting to receive home care services, and 83 individuals who are waiting to receive respite care. This appropriation, as you've indicated before, definitely demonstrates a commitment to strengthening our community and allowing folks to gracefully age in place. So I just want to acknowledge that and the support that you continue to have for not only our aging community, but for our disability community as well. So with that, I'll stop and I'll turn it over to Sean O'Donnell for his health update this afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Bridgers. No additional updates on the respiratory virus front, and we just want to share that we'll be participating in the town hall tomorrow at Walt Whitman High School, and our advisory as far as the Potomac River in the area right outside of Montgomery County is still to avoid recreational contact with the river. We'll update that as we continue to get more information in. Again, the threshold for recreational contact that has been recommended by federal guidelines is 410 parts per million of E. coli. That's what's predominantly being tested, although our testing partners are also looking at some other potential health threats that could be in the water. That is the fecal coliform standard that is mostly informing the risk that's down there. So again, we're still recommending to avoid contact recreationally with the Potomac River around where Montgomery County is.
Thank you, gentlemen. Dr. Stoddard, do you have any remarks this afternoon?
No additional comments.
Thank you. Members of the media, any questions? Please raise your hands. Ms. Hackerby from Bethesda Today, good afternoon. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. I have a question for the county executive. Yesterday at the county council meeting, there were public hearings on both of the data center related proposals that are before the council now. And your staff member testified about you and your administration being open to a moratorium if the council so chooses. I'm just curious if you could clarify, are you not able to institute a moratorium by executive order, or is it just your preference not to?
It would not be normal to do a moratorium on a zoning thing. So it's been approved by Park and Planning. They have a right to go forward. I don't want to do anything that has any question of legality, as will just make things more difficult. My concern in this is we could, if you went to the event we had, the open forum for information, there are a lot of questions and there are a lot of problems. I mean, anybody who's pretending that there are no problems is just not looking at the information. And, I made a point of talking about the good things because I think sometimes we get caught up in the problems and wonder why we're doing this at all. I hear people say, why should we have these kind of things? It's got value, but it also brings with it, a real risk, of crashing our grid. There is no fast way that anybody's going to be able to put electricity into this grid to match the speed that you can build the data center. When you talk to people, they say, well, if you need turbines, there's, a multi-year waiting period for these things. If anybody had to build a power plant, getting a power plant built and permitted in the state of Maryland in a good situation is going to be a few years. So you could wind up with, say it's this data center. If this was the only data center coming into Maryland, maybe it's manageable. Maybe if there are safeguards put on, when you throttle down power, which they don't want to do, maybe it can be okay. But if this and then others start coming in before we have figured out how we're going to supply the electricity, I don't see how you avoid homeowners' electric bills going through the ceiling. And unless there's some way for the electric company to just charge the data centers for any cost increases to the electricity in general, so the residents don't have to pay this and businesses don't have to pay it. These people make a fortune on this stuff. There's no way they're investing billions of dollars unless they're making a fortune in these things. So we shouldn't be shy about saying you need to pay for the cost and the impact in everybody else. There's no reason the world residents should bear this. There are, some environmental issues, but these I think we can handle. I've heard people talk about water coming into the river back at 20 degrees. That was the previous permit for, a burning facility, fossil fuel facility. They do not think they're coming back into the river at any higher than maybe 2 degrees above the water temperature that it came out, and possibly at the same temperature. So, I believe that that's a manageable problem. We don't have a lot of residents there, so we're not dealing with either visual or noise impacts, which, the regulations have to address for any place else the data centers might go. So I would prefer that whatever the council does is complete and that they don't do it in a hurry to get something on the books before the data center starts or before they get an approval, I want to make sure whatever goes into the books addresses the things as fully as possible, because we're not going to get a second bite at the apple. If the data center starts down the road of construction and then you suddenly decide, oh, well, you can't do that, you have to do this, we're going to be in a world of trouble. And you don't want to wind up there. So if the council can get this done comprehensively without a moratorium, fine. But if they feel they need more time before, they get the bill complete and get it right, then we should take the additional time. And then we could tailor the moratorium, whether it's a month, 3 months, or 6 months. I don't actually believe it should take more than 6 months to figure this out. But we should figure out what's the shortest period of time they need to get this work done right. Because anything other than right is a disservice to everybody.
If I could just ask a quick follow-up question. The way that County Executive Fitzwater in Frederick County approached this situation is she issued a directive to her permitting department, to the permitting department of Frederick County, not to accept any new applications for data centers. So it grandfathered in applications that had already been approved. Is that something that you would consider bypassing the council to do?
That's something I would look at. But, again, what I want to weigh is, since nobody's trying to kill the data center, I want to be sure that I don't do something that gets them to walk away. That'd be rather counterproductive. In the effort to try to get something done right, we should be able to do it reasonably quickly. So I don't want to make this impossible. I just want to make it possible with the right safeguards.
Thank you.
Thank you. Liberator Simmons, I believe you are with DC News Now.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Executive, for putting this on. My question is surrounding the Potomac River sewage spill. I just wanted to get more updates. Can you hear me? Sorry.
I hear you fine.
Just making sure. I just wanted to get your reaction to the possibility that the river restrictions will be lifted on March 2nd. And what would the county be doing in response?
I would say, show me the data. There's no reason for the river to be permanently closed down and off limits. There are probably greater problems with the land between the canal and the river where, the water ran over it, no doubt is in the soil. That's no way to avoid that. But if people feel the river is safe and they can show data that the levels of all of the potential toxins are back down to reasonable levels, I'm fine with it. Let's face it, water flows downhill. So none of the water that got dumped with this stuff is now where it started. It's all moved on its way to the Chesapeake Bay. I think somebody said it's 21 days or 23 days. So we should be seeing reductions. But I guess you have to have better understanding than I have right now of how much of that might have gone to the bottom of the river and wind up being dissolved more slowly. But that's for the experts. They've got to come back and tell us that this is the right thing, safe thing to do. And, if Sean wants to add to that, I'd be more than happy if he's got any other insights.
I just wanted to respond and share. I think that the question is in response to comments made by the District of Columbia Department of Health, that they were hopeful that the numbers will have come down by that date and that they could lift the recreational advisory. It's also important to note the District of Columbia has had a ban on swimming in the Potomac in that area. So some activities have long-standing recommendations that pre-existed before this. And certainly we've noted that the jurisdictions downriver have been affected in different ways. If you go far enough down the river, you'll see very little impacts to date. And that's something that we want to make sure the messages are getting out there. We are, again, as we've said in the past, following the science, following the bacteria levels to track this. And right now, again, we're most concerned about activities that could submerged someone in the water, where they accidentally ingested some water, or if they potentially have an open wound, they could get an infection from that. Because these levels have been so high, significantly higher than the recreational recommendations. That's where our advisors have come from. The numbers are coming down, and we have testing that's being done not only by DC Water, which we're very appreciative of, but the Maryland Department of Environment, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, the DC Department of Energy and Environment. So there's lots of partners getting in here and looking at that, not to mention the Potomac River Keepers and the University of Maryland. So a lot of data for us to compare and try to make sure that things are safe enough for people to go out there and be on the water.
So I want to add something that the county executive said, and I think the environmental remediation part of this is something that's going to be really important to Montgomery County, particularly as it relates to the C&O Canal and the land that is between where the break occurred and the Potomac River, because obviously what we know about untreated sewage water is that it can contain any number of different contaminants that could have a broader environmental impact beyond just the bacterial and viral impact that Sean was alluding to. Those could include, and we don't know, I think, because different sewage has different levels of different chemicals, but you can have cleaners, you can have phosphates associated with cleaners in there, you can have residual pharmaceuticals. I think they've often detected people who flush unused medication, now that you can detect residual levels of those things. You could have heavy metals potentially in there. And so all of those things can have different environmental impacts and would have different, because obviously that there can be concentrating effects in animals, for example, that we don't know about. I think it's just really important that I think there should be some additional analysis of the land, animals who may have interacted with the land, and understanding furthermore just sort of what the environmental remediation looks like for Montgomery County. And I think it's just really important to understand regionally there's going to be different impacts in different jurisdictions. Given how far south this break occurred in Montgomery County, our river-based exposure is real in Glen Echo, but obviously our land-based exposure is more significant than any other jurisdiction. So obviously the concerns diverge slightly across the region.
Thank you. I see Jenny Abamu, WAMU. Good afternoon, Jenny.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you guys for doing this as usual. And I just wanted to clarify, County Executive, on your position on the moratoriums. So is it fair to say that you only want to put a moratorium if it's absolutely needed, and that you're leaning, you don't want to derail the project indication that's already underway, but you also have a lot of recommendations? And do you realistically think that you can get all those things through within the time frame that you would not need a moratorium?
Yeah. So the list of things that were published were not necessarily recommendations. They were the kind of questions that have been asked by many people for us to examine. And so our recommendations are, I think some of them are generally accepted. We need setbacks. This facility is kind of ideal because there's no housing around it. And so it has very little visual impact or noise impact. So I think, those are the easy things. The big issue is going to come down to assurances about water going back into the river, that it's both clean and at a temperature that doesn't do harm to aquatic life in the river. And a huge issue about energy. Are they going to bring their own energy? Are they going to use dirty backup, or are they going to use clean backup? I mean, there are companies that are building state-of-the-art facilities that use little or no water, that bring their own power, and don't trigger the issues of concern to the grid, because their power means they are not going into the grid for power. So we want those issues explored. It may not be possible because of the location of this to bring your own power. So the question is, what are the backups going to be and what's the storage going to be? I think these are doable, but they're a little bit thornier to wrestle with than saying, let's have a 500-foot buffer, for visual, and let's have this level of sound. Those things I think are easy to get to. The more difficult questions probably involve the power issue.
And do you feel that you can settle these things without the moratorium, like realistically? Because I think that's what a lot of people were kind of talking about, and so I'm just kind of trying to understand your thought process on it.
I think it's possible, but if I'm a little. I don't know why people would object to it. I don't know why somebody didn't say 6 months is too long, but we can do this in 3 months. I mean, my big concern is somebody going through the door because they've got a project approved by Park and Planning and starting an approval process in which they become vested in things that we may want to regulate. It's not good to go back in and tell somebody we approved you, but now we're taking this back. That would probably create problems for us as well. So I want to make sure everybody's got enough time to do this right. And so part of me doesn't understand why people wouldn't want to at least guarantee themselves a couple of months or 3 months to work on it, rather than just take the chance that somebody could beat them to the draw. So that's my concern.
Sorry, one last follow-up. When you say problems for us, do you mean lawsuits?
Yeah, those are problems. Yeah, somebody gets vested, they've got approval, they've made investments, and then suddenly say the rules are different. That's one of the things that can cause problems for a jurisdiction.
Thank you, Jenny. Judith Ruth, the Greater Olney News. Good afternoon, Judith.
Hi, Lorna. Thank you. Mr. County Executive, I'm hearing from my readers almost on an hourly basis these days about the Starter and Silver Homes Act there in Annapolis. They are worried that this is more of the same discussion that has been going on in the county for a couple of years, and they are terrified that they are not going to have the autonomy, if you will, to have their single family home in a single family neighborhood if this is passed. What is your thought on that?
So I'm worried about this bill too. This ostensibly started out because there were jurisdictions that either made it impossible to build housing, or who, when somebody proposed the development, if they didn't like the development, suppose the development was going to have affordable housing in it, and they didn't want the kind of people who live in affordable housing, that they would then look to amend the rules. That's not Montgomery County, and we don't do that, and we wouldn't do that, and we haven't done that. So that's, to me, what was disguised as we're responding to this problem of these jurisdictions that don't build anything. On the other hand, Montgomery County's got over 100,000 units that have been approved to be built in our master plans, meaning if a developer buys a piece of property in any of these master planned areas, whatever zoning is in place would allow for the building of a pretty substantial amount of housing in Montgomery County, more than the projected needs for the last 30 years. And so unlike other places, the county can honestly say that we're well poised for additional growth and development in the county. And most of the growth and development, except when Park and Planning is most recently messing with the council with what they did along University Boulevard, most of the growth and development is near jobs and near our projected growth in Montgomery County. Most of the growth projected from Montgomery County in jobs and housing is in the 355 I-270 corridor. So we have a plan. Over the years, we've built out in the plan. One of the members said, well, sometimes developers cancel their plans because, somebody died in the family, or, we got in the tiff with our partner. And that may be true, but it doesn't mean it doesn't come back to life again when somebody else gets a hold of the company, or when you find a different partner. So over the years, we've pretty much built out this county. The way everything you live in was part of a master plan. So the idea that suddenly we can't rely on our master plans to build housing is a problem. Another problem with the bill is, in its current form, they want to use the proof of building permits as proof of whether or not you have affordable housing, or whether or not you have housing. Forget affordable. There's nothing in this bill that requires affordability. I'll also just say the idea that if you shrink the lot size from 6,000 to 5,000 square feet, that you're going to get a smaller home and a cheaper home is just factually not true. if you think about it, our lots are, our 60 lot is 60 by 100. And our 50 lot, which would be 5,000 square feet, is 50 by 100. So if I build a 42-foot wide home, the difference is in the R60 lot, you'd have 8 feet on it, or 8 feet, 9 feet on each side of the house. And in the R50 lot, you'd have something like 5 feet on each side of the house. Those houses aren't going to be any cheaper than the house built on an R60 lot. So it creates this fiction that somehow if the lot is smaller, you're going to get affordable housing. It ignores the fact that Montgomery County has already passed an ADU law that allows for accessory dwelling units on pretty much every house lot in Montgomery County that's either R60 or R90. That is literally probably more than 100,000 lots where you could build an ADU, which would be the kind of small, affordable starter stuff people are talking about. 1, maybe 2-bedroom places for people looking for a starter place to live that isn't extraordinarily expensive. I could probably go, in fact, I know I could go on about this because I testified about it. So I'm concerned about something that, shouldn't be applied to Montgomery County. And going back to the permit issue, we don't control whether or not developers submit for a permit. So if you're a developer and you see a pipeline of projects that are in line to be built, you can calculate pretty quickly whether you think this pipeline is going to absorb demand in the next couple of years or not. So if you decide you're going to hold off applying for a building permit until you think there's enough demand to satisfy your building permit, we're going to get punished for it. And you're almost punished for your own success because they're ignoring, people who are already doing building or thinking about doing building. There's a lot. I'd be happy to talk with you more. We've been working with Prince George's County on this because they've got the same kind of anxiety that we do. I'll point out that both them and us have produced an awful lot of affordable housing. I've done almost 9,000 units in the last 7 years. Most of those units do not come from developments where they're primarily market rate. They come from our conscious decisions to start investing in building affordable housing where it's needed, because frankly, developers will not build a stick of affordable housing unless they're required to do it. So the county's played a more active role in, building affordable housing, which is the kind of stuff that you would think this state would be happy about. So I'm kind of hoping that, they let the county measure us by how much housing we've zoned for, measure whether the housing we've zoned for meets the predicted demand over the next, they want to use a 3-year period. That's fine with me. Right now, we've zoned for enough units to satisfy the county's projected demand through 2050. So the idea that you need to do something radical like this is not based on the reality of the county. The last thing I'll say, you should be worried about the state. You should be more worried about the planning board. If you watch what the planning board did, and frankly, the council, on the university corridor plan, basically and the more housing now, they put housing and increased density in places that are nowhere near jobs. So gone is the smart growth notion that you build near jobs. It's detached from all the planning this county has done before. So not only will the state take this away from you, if the council and the planning board have their way, particularly the planning board, you may lose this anyway. And I've tried to remind people that one of the state delegates asked me, why are people so upset about this? And I said, well, I don't know, ask yourself. Your house is probably the most important investment you make. And almost everybody I know did not just say, I'm coming to Montgomery County, I'll drive down the street, I'll find a house, and that's it. People look for houses. People look for houses. They look for the house. They look for the neighborhood. They want to know do I want, tree-lined streets? Do I want a place where my kids can walk around safely? Does it have sidewalks? Is it removed from an industrial or commercial area so that I have relative peace and calm in my neighborhood? That's the kind of thing people look for. And for anybody to say none of that counts, and I don't understand why people are concerned about that, I would ask them, how did you buy your house? Did you just, throw a dart at a map and say, that's where I'm going to live? Or did you actually look for a place where you wanted to live? And this policy or this approach to planning totally negates those kind of decisions that real human beings actually make. And you've got planning board members who've actually said, we should not listen to citizens. That's an even bigger problem.
Wow. Thank you very much. I have one quick question for the health team, if I may. Just wondering if there's any update on that Virginia woman who had visited the Bethesda building a couple of weeks ago. Any new update on measles? Anything new to report?
Sean.
Yep. So we don't have any additional information on the case that visited us, but we have contacted everyone who has reached out to us who said they were in the vicinity of the building, and we have not identified any new transmissions related to that.
Okay, thank you.
I think as Dr. Davis expressed to us in a meeting earlier this week, we're really leaving the period of where you would start to see symptoms emerging by this point if you had an exposure. So I think we're I would say cautiously optimistic that we may not see an additional transmission, but obviously as Sean alluded to, we're still keeping in contact.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Members of the media, any additional questions for county officials this afternoon? Before we close this meeting, I'd like to let everyone know that tomorrow's DC Water meeting at Walt Whitman High School will be live streamed on the county's YouTube channel, the Facebook page, as well as on County Cable Montgomery, starting at 7 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.
Thank you all.